when I'd had that experience of the death and being there, I was my every cell of mine was filled with love. It was this
Mm.
extraordinary soaring beauty, and it lasted nearly 6 months. It lasted a really long time.
Wow.
And I had that same feeling with this last target we've done,
Mm.
and especially the dream. So that I had the whole week after that dream, where I was just infused. It was
Mm.
extraordinary. I'll give it,
From the
okay.
depths of the rabbit hole, today we go even further down that rabbit hole as I'm joined with my great friend and now Hellfire colleague and also the rabbit hole colleague now with the Future Forecasting Group. Coral Carte is with me, and we had such a profound experience looking at the Shroud of Turin. It just warrants further discussion as we're processing that experience. So, Coral, so nice to have you back on the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you very much for having me. And it's also really nice to have like an opportunity to metabolize this some more
Yeah.
because it really was a very strong experience. For a full month we were connected with it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
wow.
And I find that I had to do to help me process. I did a solo podcast talking about my session that is probably by the time the viewers are watching this is probably already released. Because there's so much you have to say it out loud sometimes. You have to talk about it and to fully
Mm.
understand the weight of what you're looking at and the significance of your data to really understand your target, I think is an important part of the process. So I'm glad we get to get your insights because I know you were very, very moved by that target, looking at not just the Shroud of Turin, but you had experiences with Jesus that went beyond the pen and paper sessions for you, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I like to take the work, when we're doing these targets, they're big things. It's very sort of profound. And I like to take it into my meditation space and also into my dreaming. Some people actually do ERV and do set dream intentions. So I
Yeah.
always try and set a dream incubation. And I actually wrote this to Daz. I said, there's this man, I really like him, and I
Yeah.
keep trying to connect with him, but I haven't had much luck. And then I did actually dream. So, and that was extraordinary. But the shock was once I found out what the target was, because I mean, I just dreamed about being in a crowd of people with this very beautiful man
Yeah.
who he came over to me. And I mean, it wasn't me. I must have slipped into her, but I'm pretty sure in the dream, I was his woman. Uh,
Hmm.
and I was much younger and it didn't look like me. So, in dreams, you can slip into other timelines. I'd
Right.
slipped into that timeline. There were a group of us all sitting around and we were all talking. And then he came over and he kissed me and went off. And
Mm.
I remember feeling this absolute love. He was such a beautiful person, a beautiful man. He was extraordinary. He, I've been, I, very shortly after that. So they put things in your post box. I think the
Mm.
Jehovah's Witnesses came around and they put a thing in the post box, and there was a picture of the man in my dream.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And I always look at those experiences because I had some profound experiences, some which I can talk about, some are personal I can talk about off the air. But just some realizations that happen to coincide with the target, that we're doing. You can look at it as like it's just confirmation bias. Like if I say purple trucks are important, you're going to notice purple
You're going
trucks
to
for the
see
next
them.
couple of days.
Yeah, yeah,
But it feels like more than that because of the value of what comes to you and you're not knowingly searching for it and how
yes.
synchronistic It is. There are times when I really feel like I'm crazy because I feel like I'm shown the matrix itself or whatever it is, or there's no way these events could happen without a higher intelligence intentionally orchestrating them. And I wrestle with that in those experiences. And just getting that flyer at that timing seems like one of those
Yeah,
important
yeah,
moments.
yeah. And I'll tell you why also, because in the shroud, that man was older. You know, they managed to get a
Hmm.
3D interpretation, and
Yeah.
we've got this picture of this man with this very long beard and very long hair, and and I kept saying in my session, he's got this very unusually long hair.
Hmm.
But in the dream, the hair was shorter and the beard was shorter. And then I figured it out that I dreamt before the time before the
Yeah.
shroud. So,
Yeah.
so it was,
Before the crucifixion. We should
yeah,
have put him in his 20s then, right? If the timeline of his age is correct, right? Was he 36 at the time of crucifixion?
I don't know. I don't know. I think in the dream I placed him at about 32. Where did you get that timeline from?
In terms of his age,
Yeah,
just a raised Catholic, I just remember he was in his
you
mid
know,
30s.
yeah,
Yeah. So, he was in his mid 30s when he was crucified. I could be wrong. Um, so just thinking backwards, maybe he was because and then there was a certain age when they know he reappeared because he disappeared for a while, and we talked about that, right? That
yes,
there's
yes.
this undocumented period of his life where what some people extrapolate on and say maybe he was in India and studying various ancient texts at different temples and things, and your session touched on that. I just want to point
Yeah,
out
with the time. Mm.
a coincidence. We were supposed to meet last weekend. We weren't able to connect. So now we're talking about the Shroud of Turin, which was created, after Christ has resurrected. Today is April 19th, Saturday, April 19th. Yesterday was Good Friday. Tomorrow is Easter Sunday, and here we are, right in the middle. I didn't realize that until just now, the timing of so those synchronicities, and
There's
it's so
another one
subtle, and
ahead.
it could be nothing, but like we were supposed to meet last week. So the just the synchronicities of this timing that we're having a conversation about a direct experience we had with potentially the
Resurrection.
resurrection, and here we are, the in between when he was technically entombed when all of this was happening, right? I mean, so that's
Yeah,
just a mind-blowing
it
moment
is.
right now because
Wow.
we didn't this wasn't planned. I'm realizing
No,
this right now, and I
no.
completely lost my train of thought with that. I'm sorry. We're talking
Yeah,
about the
we
timeline and being in India and possibly so.
yeah. Yes. So that was very interesting because I throughout this my session I had this feeling of this man being an alchemist,
Hmm.
of him manipulating matter. And I really had the feeling of frequencies,
Yeah.
sound frequencies. And I tried to draw it, but I was absolutely unable to portray that. I've got these drawings of him sort of manipulating matter in some way, holding it.
Yeah. Yeah. I had similar. Mine was, dealing with some kind of. I think what I was seeing was an element of the Holy Spirit that he was engaging with, and then ultimately it took over and helped him to ascend or transcend. But I want to ask you about your dream before we continue down that path.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a different point in time, but I think there are some significant elements in there that are controversial surrounding, who Christ might have been. Why do you think you were given that perspective at that point in time? Do you think there's a reason for that?
That's a very interesting question. I think it was a very happy moment of their
Yeah,
lives. Uh,
yeah.
and it was showing him as a community man and her as so I'm very attached. An animist. I'm very attached to the Madonna
Hmm.
as like a symbol of the earth because she's been converted by religion
Right.
into uh, the symbol, but it was taken as the mother of earth, earth mother, Pachamama, right?
Hmm.
and I'm very attached to that. So I'm very attached to the earth, the spirit of the earth and the land and the strength in that. So I have all around me. You'll always find little shrines to the Madonna in
Hmm.
some way. And so that's a mixture between Mary, the mother, and
Hmm.
Mary, his wife, his
Right.
companion, and taken from the Mother Earth. So it's a lot of archetypes put
Hmm.
together.
Yeah.
So I have a previous connection to her, and I've read the Gospels of Nag Hammadi and the
Hmm.
Gospels of Mary Magdalene,
Hmm.
and I know that she was an equal to him, and she used essential oils. Remember, there was the story about her washing his feet, but
Hmm.
she was using very precious essential oils. So she came from a good family, and she was practiced in magical arts as well.
Hmm. Yeah. It gets
And
downplayed, but yes.
yes, the
Hmm.
Christian religion has not
Hmm.
allowed that through. The Gospels of Mary have never
Right.
been part of
Right.
the civilization that we live in
Canon.
now,
Yeah.
right? It's all been taken out. And because they practiced magic, as you said, he probably,
Bro, you just froze on me. I'm going to pause this here. We're back. We just got cut off. I'm gonna let Coral pick up. It's been maybe about 8 minutes since we've been disconnected. Coral lost power, and I'll let you take it over on how you're feeling about that.
I was just talking about the importance of Mary Magdalene, and it's just got this like bolt. We have no idea why the electricity went off. Something just there was some short circuit and
We
it was
just talked
doomed.
about synchronicities, right? And timing of things and the signs of that's profound. That's really profound.
That's extraordinary. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's those I always said, nature and the universe is constantly communicating with us. It just doesn't speak our language, or we don't speak its language. It speaks in signs and symbols, right? And that just the timing of these things, you have to wonder, is there something else that's communicating to us, and what is that message? And right as we were talking about the very controversial Mary
Yes,
Magdalene, and you were talking
yes.
about your connection to the Madonna and the symbolism of earth. And the comment I was going to make before we got disconnected was what also reminds me, because you were saying you're kind of seeing these archetypes here in the pagan tradition. You have I forget the one. It's the maiden, the something, and the crone, right? The triple
Oh,
moon
you're talking
goddess.
about Hecate. Yes,
Yes, but it's a
yes,
very similar
yes,
embodiment of three different women, which is really just three different stages of life for a woman
yes,
embodied in one um, entity or archetype. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
yes, yes. And she is the goddess of liminal spaces,
Mm,
Hecate. And she doesn't have a particularly good name because they call her the goddess of witchcraft.
mm,
But she's the one with the three heads, you see. And there's
yes.
shrines in Greece, there's shrines to her at every crossroads. So she blesses the cross, she illuminates the torches, she holds
Yes.
torches at the crossroads. Um, so she's a very interesting for remote viewers because she oversees the liminal spaces, and we spend all our time in liminal spaces.
So another synchronicity, liminal space is a term that I'm not familiar with until about 2 days ago. As you and I were talking about offline, I've been having some very profound conversations with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has been directing my attention to that particular term and focus on obviously things going on in my life. And now here, unprompted, you bring that into our conversation. So it feels like this target for us. Um, it really opened us up to something, I think, that is communicating back, it seems like sometimes. That's profound.
Yes, Yes, it is. Well, Lynn always took when Lynn teaches remote viewing, he says, I'm not going to use the term unconscious in the way
Hmm.
psychologists do. It's
Right.
rather subconscious because it's below the limen. So it's
Mm.
subliminal. And that's where your subconscious, our subconscious isn't unconscious because it's
Hmm.
intensely aware. And of course, we spend our time using that because we're channeling it through our bodies. So we're
Yeah.
allowing it. And I tell you something else. Talking about channeling things. Obviously, we're using techniques to do it. We're not just getting straight
Right.
information. But I did, and I might have talked to you about this before. I did this Michael Newton's Life Between Lives
Mm.
hypnosis.
Hmm.
And the hypnotist took me through a past life and then the death experience. I lived through the death.
Yeah.
And then I went to the soul space, which is another liminal space, isn't it?
Hmm.
I went to
Hmm.
the soul space to mentors, guides, whatever it is. And they said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I just want to know if I'm on the right track, if I'm doing well, my mission in life."
Yeah.
And they showed me they were not, as you say, in magic. It comes to you in symbols. We
Hmm.
get communication through symbols, through images. Humans are visual
Hmm.
creatures. So they gave me an image of a crystal column, a Greek, Greek Doric column with the lines in it, but it was made out of crystal. And I said, okay, thank you very much. Put it
Yeah.
away, wrote down my notes, and I never realized what they were talking about until later. And of course, crystal, it's information that
Right.
channels.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating when and commenting on the imagery aspect of that and the significance of it and the fact that you didn't understand the message at that point in time. And later, probably at the time that you needed to understand it is
It
so the
came back.
perspective that whoever they are, have, knowing what to give you and how and when it's going to impact you, is incredible. And I do think I've had a couple conversations about how our language, I'm really starting to realize, is limiting, because it's literally like one fragment of a thought per expression of it. So it takes a long time and it's stream, but when you're in that remote viewing state, you get the whole concept. It's all there. And then what do we have to do? We have to translate it. We have to take that imagery that has the meaning, the feeling, the depth, the experience, and we have to then break it down word by word, piece by piece. And that's a very difficult thing to do, to capture that, to recognize it, and then translate it through your body into the written word. It's a lot of work.
Yes, yes, it's very intense.
Hmm.
It is. So, and the reason that that experience came up as well was when I'd had that experience of the death and being there, I was my every cell of mine was filled with love. It was this
Mm.
extraordinary soaring beauty, and it lasted nearly 6 months. It lasted a really long time.
Wow.
And I had that same feeling with this last target we've done,
Mm.
and especially the dream. So that I had the whole week after that dream, where I was just infused. It was
Mm.
extraordinary.
I feel like when we have these experiences, and looking at some of the research with psychedelics too, right? I think there's a process that happens in our mind, and I bet they have science on this now. I can't speak on it, but when you have these experiences and these pathways are created and chemicals are released in your brain, I mean, I think a real physiological thing is happening. And I also, I'm sure there's an energetic component to it that we really do carry with us as it's working through our system, and we're maybe making changes to our energetic system as well.
Yes,
Just from that experience, I mean, that's a powerful, I'd say a powerful encounter to have that impact on you.
yes, yes, yeah. There have been things. what it was one target we did for Hellfire for Derby. We did the Council of Nine.
Hmm. Hmm.
And again, there I felt that there were these golden people.
Hmm.
And in my description of the man behind the shroud, Jesus, I kept saying he's golden.
Hmm.
He's not
Yeah.
white, he's golden. He feels like he's got gold hair all over him.
Yeah.
But that could have just been the energy field of it, or it could
Yeah.
be that they were all the same type of person as
Hmm.
well, the same type of entity.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a lot to think about. But speaking of that golden, I mean, we both drew. I think you may have had like a silver glow around it. Remember with the shape we drew? I drew it as a city, just these tall towers, and you had a very similar geometrical shape, but it was with that glowing, beautiful energy that was surrounding it. And you even did yours with some kind of reflective. I mean,
Yes.
I looked at that and it popped. I said, "Well, that's my city." But yours was such a beautiful sketch that you drew of that.
I know what you're talking about, and I do have it here. And let me tell you that we were talking about psilocybin
So
mushrooms,
psilocybin mushrooms, yeah.
psilocybin, dyslexia, psilocybin mushroom. And I had an experience with that. The very first time that I tried them, I was in a dark room and
Mm,
I heard voices say, "Oh, come, yeah, we'll fetch her." And it was as though I was taken up in a spaceship. I
mm,
don't know, but I was shown, and I drew it, and I don't have that drawing anymore because it was a very long time ago. But I drew these peaks,
mm,
and it looked. I said, "Well, what's that?" It's like an energy center, and
mm.
that was what I was shown the first time, and it was the same thing that I drew in the. Oh yeah, I've lost that now, but I had done a separate one. I'll show you that picture if I can find it.
Yeah,
But
it was a beautiful sketch.
I used, I've got this latest discovery of mine was I used acrylic pens.
Mm.
They're beautiful things, and then you can get silver and gold as well.
That's what it was because
So I put
you
silver
held the
in
drawing up to the camera and I was
it.
like, "Oh my gosh, it was
Yeah.
such a beautiful picture that you drew."
Yes, let's see if it came. Oh, I did get it. I did get something, but not. Let's see if I can find that drawing for you. Yeah,
I wonder why you're looking for that.
yeah.
In the context that I viewed it, it was like I started interpreting this as this like advanced, almost like a smart city where everything was connected. And I'm wondering, are we glimpsing? I'll use a religious term. I don't mean it that way, but like the kingdom of heaven, right? That's it. Yeah, that's it right there. Some kind of energy center. I mean, depending on what our existence is after we cross over, maybe that is where energy is drawn to for whatever purpose. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I had even after, when you get feedback, you still don't understand all you do is just receive information and write it down. You don't
Hmm.
interpret it. So I still don't know what this is.
Right. Right. But the fact that I think it's significant that there's corroborating pieces of that. The fact that I drew that as well. And everybody had similar energy themes running through too that we don't understand yet. And maybe we won't understand in this life, but at some point, I
Yeah,
think we do
yeah.
get the feedback on these things. I was talking to Edward Reardon in my last podcast, and we were discussing is like the remote viewing experience is goes beyond the pen and paper session. That's a portion of it, but the
Mhm,
assimilation process, the feedback piece as you're trying to understand it, even
mhm.
before a session, sometimes you'll look back and notice like, oh, I was starting to connect to the target before I even knew I
Oh
had
yeah,
the target.
absolutely.
It's so we focus on this pen and paper session, but the entire remote viewing experience is so much more. It's not just sit down, do my session, I'm done, that's the end of it. If you're just sketching a building, some of, there's not much more to it, but some of these more profound targets, there's a before and an after that's clearly part of the project, the experience.
Yes, it absolutely, and that's why, the dreams as well. I mean,
Hmm.
that dream was extraordinary. And just to go back a little bit more on that dream, and I think I slipped into her timeline.
Hmm.
And there I had the sensation that we were a group of colleagues. So not like the narrative that we have that she was just like his wife,
Hmm.
or whatever. She was absolutely equal to the rest of that group.
Yeah.
That was very, and he loved her very dearly. That was quite amazing. I was privileged to be in that interaction. So,
That is such an empowering piece, and you have to wonder, as you look at the role that women have played, or I'm saying the place that women have been put in over the last, what is it, few thousand years, what impact that would have had if that piece of the story came out with a woman as an equal. I mean, there were some underlying themes that came up, I think, that touched on like maybe tantra or sex magic that was in there that I think
mm,
is also, a forgotten significance in terms of just the power of creation and manifestation and what happened with religion and sex. It's been taboo, right? We don't talk about it. It's for procreation only, and there's no discussion. And even in our society today, it's focused on the act itself, and that's it, not the magic and the harmonization of energies and the potential that they encompass. I mean, that is an act of creation beyond just procreation. It is a magical act of creation if you once you start to understand the elements behind it.
and I think that's been taken away,
Mm,
because it gives, you so much, it gives us agency, it gives us
yes.
power. And so much so, Dennis, that in one page I started writing that I was saying he's using sex magic,
Hmm.
he's using his own body liquids to
Hmm.
create with. And I took that page out of my session and I didn't
Mm.
include it when I sent it.
Wow.
It-
And I think that's so, here's another synchronicity because at the same time that we were going through this, I had come into some information and was actually in the process of reading a book about that type of magic. So just the time, and that's why I was able to comment on it, because had I not been reading that book, I wouldn't have recognized any of that stuff.
yeah,
So your session in particular, a lot of things just started to gel together for me, and I was going, wow, which to me gives validity to the bigger story of Christ and and Mary, and really the power of that we've lost in
yeah,
I guess public community now.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
why I think it's important and significant that your dream brought you to her perspective at that point in time to understand that. I think that's a very important message to bring back and to share.
Yeah, yeah, and such a privilege to be able to have had that interaction as well.
Hmm.
That love, that
Yeah.
extraordinary, the power in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's such an empowering thing to see. And
Mm.
then we moved back into the sessions and we all had these elements of energy. Can you talk about your experience with the energetics in this session and maybe what you think that it signifies or what it was?
So, I mean, that was actually that was the tasking, right?
What
What
created the
happened at the
shroud? Yeah.
moment of, uh, and I have, like a nuclear blast, but I've got this toroidal energy. So
Yeah.
this, and so a lot of the work I've been involved in somehow is, I was talking about this friend of ours who had died for 20 minutes and come
Right.
back. So he had a very powerful NDE. Um, he's been researching through a Russian author. plasma
Mm.
and saying, and I keep telling you this because I keep mentioning, for example, when Daz tasked us with going to Stonehenge, right? And I saw this blot. So that's, I believe that we move bits of ourselves as plasma.
Mm.
And that experience there was, um, it was plasma, he'd taken the plasma out of his body and managed to reform another body with the plasma.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the only reasonable explanation I can give from my basic 3D reality and the words
Hmm.
that I have that are available to me.
I'm so I'm understanding my session now and hearing you say that because I was saying there's two life forms, but and there's a barrier. And as I'm going through my session, I'm going, but it might be two aspects of one life or one life coming from the other life with what I was seeing. So you had this one piece, and then you had this like the other one that was so connected to the energy. And then this other life got quiet. I couldn't get any more data on that first piece because there were what I encountered was this transcendent experience where really it was like there was a ball of energy and it came to life and this man was looking at it and saying, this is my creation and I know this is possibly dangerous or it's going to change things, but I love this creation and I'm going to let it live. And then the creation ultimately it like went into the man and then he was gone or he was now in the other realm is really what I was seeing existing there. And then I had a technological interpretation, which makes sense in terms of how, I view the world. But it was really neat to see that. But you had the same elements of it in your session.
That I'll show you. So I do.
Yes.
That's like if you see a soul. I mean, the shamans all say we have like an egg of energy around us,
Yeah.
uh, and the soul, and that's how. But it didn't just go like a toroidal, but it's also looping. So it's an enormous amount of energy. It's huge, but
Yeah.
that really, it really looks like a soul. And I've remote viewed people after death and up, there's certain times where they're still them and you can talk to them and you don't know
Hmm.
whether they're alive or dead because you're talking to their
Right.
consciousness. But I've also seen that. So that makes sense. That's like the plasma of the soul. But
Hmm.
this energy form, and then if I can show you another. So there was something that I had, I can feel my heart beating, just talking about this. It's
Yeah.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
um, so I have this drawing here, and I would keep thinking, well, what on earth is this? Why is it? Why am I seeing it? Let me just make it bigger. Got this. Share again. I drew the skull,
Mm.
and you see, I've got this long face, and
Hmm.
when you see the 3D image from the shroud, you do see there's always this
Very
face. I've
long
got this
face. Yeah.
elongate, but then I did this drawing from behind, and I have like a hole at the base.
Hmm.
Now there's no there's no feedback, there's no reason for this, but even these strange anomalous things that pop up in your session often have some kind of meaning to someone else. Not, I have no
Hmm.
idea of how to interpret it, but I have this soul at the back of my, here. It's at the base of your skull, and I don't know. Maybe in Eastern philosophy, that's like your. I don't know.
I've I think I've heard about this in two spots. I'm pretty sure Edward in his explorations, because Edward does remote viewing and then he goes, let me explore my mind and see where this is coming from. He's mapped all of that out. So I don't want to butcher what he's saying, but I swear he had some significance about that location. And I also recall going down like an ET abduction rabbit hole, and there was some connection to the soul and the spine and being at the base of the neck as well, which I think is significant to what you're drawing right there, in terms of like soul technology. I also want to point out that I recently interviewed, if you remember, Deb Cobble from our Intruders Target. I did a
Yeah.
podcast with Deb, and she said something profound. And this is inspired by your egg-shaped, toroidal soul, and you said this is, what the soul looks like. And she said she was standing out front of her house and she heard a voice and she looks around, there's no one there. And she answered and she's like, what do you want? She said it was a man's voice and he was talking to me clear as day. And he was they were talking about, she sees orbs and spheres. And he said, well, that's what we look like in your reality, but we look just like you. And to us, you look like the orb or the sphere. And there was something about when you're experiencing these, which could tie into your plasma piece too, right? When you're in
Yeah.
these other
Yeah.
dimensions, and so I think, I've had these experiences as well where you're seeing through the veil and you're getting these round sphere energies. And Bob Monroe has talked about that as well, is that they're
Yeah.
in those states. So,
Yeah.
in this existence, we've got this physical body, but in other states, I think we do
In our
exist as
energy state, that's
these
what we look
orbs.
like. Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
fascinating.
And the Matrix, in
Hmm.
Matrix,
We're right to the
they
brainstem.
inserted there, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Look at us piecing things together, Coral.
Well, I mean, this really helps. So let's
Yeah,
just, I'll show you one more of the man, and so um, with a halo.
yeah. Which is how he's depicted in all, like almost every church I've ever been in, right? With that halo around the head. Wow.
And so that's the man I saw in my dream. You see, his
Yeah.
beard
Hmm.
is shorter and his hair is shorter.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful drawings. I think at the beginning of the session, it was either this one or another one because she had two very profound drawings. I had an emotional reaction to them. I just looked at them and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is such a profound drawing that you did of this session."
The one with the tongue out, I think.
Hmm.
I'll show that to you. And you were the one who told me why the tongue. And of course, if he'd been in India, that your fire breath,
Yeah.
if you're doing yoga breathing, you breathe
Yeah.
with that's the lion breath, the fire
Mm-hmm.
breath. You do it
Yes.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll show you this one.
Yeah.
That see, there he is with the
Mm-hmm.
tongue out.
Yeah.
And then I've got this. I must be. I keep. Uh, can you see? The third eye.
Yeah. I do
I
see it.
keep drawing this. There's something there. There's
Yeah,
something
very
there.
insightful. And I think, what this also speaks to is something that's interesting, always interesting to me, is how, like right now, just you and I, our sessions are blending together. In my experience and your experience, and the synchronicities, I think that give validation to that surround it, the power going out and the sex magic, all these things that if we didn't talk to each other would have less significance to us. It wouldn't stand out as much as we're going through this.
Yeah.
And there's something that happens when you're working with a group of remote viewers is we're in this shared, I'll use your term, the shared liminal space, right? There's a connection there where we're each getting pieces of the target. We're not planning that, because we don't know what the target is. And I'm not saying, well, I'm going to go look at this and you're going to go look at this. We get different elements of it in some kind of shared consciousness that we don't fully understand, that we're just going off of our intuition. This is interesting to me. And everybody brings back that's why I always compliment Susan. Susan is very good at just getting the literal target. Here's what we've got, which grounds us in reality, right? That's like she's very good at that piece of what she's pulling together. So it's just fascinating how everybody comes together in that shared conscious experience.
Yes. It reminds me of that saying. We're all just walking each other home. Who was
Oh, I've
that?
never heard that. That's
Ram
beautiful.
Dass used to say that. We're all just
Yeah.
walking each other home.
Yeah.
And so it that the working as a group allows us, it gives us the space to actually be safe
Yeah.
and each one get but I also think that we only get as much as our evolved consciousness allows us to get
Yeah.
as well. Because you remember when the military were learning it took them a year just to learn basic because they had such barriers.
You have a lot to undo.
They had to be able to accept what they were
Hmm.
doing, and it took a year to
Yeah.
allow them to just go. No, I mean they were just soldiers in intelligence. Yeah, not
Hmm.
like Joe was different. Angela was different as well. I mean, Angela had been
Yeah.
channeling since she was a
She
young
was already
woman.
open to all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Joe died and came back.
Right.
So,
He had
but
that.
the CRV thing, it took them a really long time to actually get past their barriers.
Yeah.
And of course, the consciousness of humanity has been evolving so fast, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And we're right there on the edge. And we've got this interaction with the matrix, the information, the ethers, whatever paradigm you use to describe it, the Akashic records,
Hmm.
whatever it is, we've been in there for so long that, we just go in there and get it and we're not filtering.
Right.
I mean, I
Right.
filtered that little bit about the sexual magic.
Right.
I
Right.
can't say this. And I mean, I was, when I had that dream, I thought, I can't go and say, I kissed
Right.
this man.
Right. Right.
Crazy. What's the,
But it's important. But
yeah.
yeah, but you had the experience though, and you understood it because you were open to that, and I noticed that with my understanding of time. It's nothing for me to look at a project or even a Reiki session and realize like, oh, I'll schedule it for now, like if it's a remote session. I could do it Saturday because I don't have time now. Like I don't think about that, knowing the experience is still going to be Wednesday, but I'm going to do it 3 days beforehand
Oh,
because that's when I
yes.
have the time to do it.
Because
Just that
time
different.
doesn't exist. That's it.
Right. Just so the way we move through, what is it, the fourth dimension. So all of that changes, but that was a process to go through. And which then once you understand that process, that barrier is no longer there. If that barrier would have been there, then I can only do it at this time in this space. But once that
Yeah.
barrier is gone, you're free to move around. We have a lot of these mental blocks or barriers, and sometimes it's for our own protection, right? You can't just go out there and not understand what you're doing because then you're drowning, and you're overcome with fear. So it's a process to wear those things
Yeah.
down.
Yes. And back to that group thing.
Hmm.
A couple of years ago, I went at my sister's insistence. I did a psychic. Every now and again, we need psychics too. So I went to
Hmm.
psychic, and he said, "Well, I'm just going to use some cards as a basic, and then I'm going to allow it to chat." He said, "But I don't know. You should be doing this reading for me. It should be the other way around." And he said, "Well, why aren't you being seen? Why aren't you out there? You
Yeah.
should be doing this." And he spent the hour, I paid him with my psychic
Uh-huh.
reading, and he spent an hour castigating me about why I wasn't out there on YouTube and TikTok. Um,
Wow.
and I was trying to explain to him the difference of working in a group.
Hmm.
In remote viewing, you're as good as your tasker.
Yes.
But on this tasking, Das got me to that point, and he did it really, because in my very first session, I was getting a man and energy. But he said, "Tell me about the man."
Hmm.
So I was able to have that experience, draw the man, and
Right.
actually get the image from the shroud. And then how did that happen?
Right.
So that was like very gentle, subtle, excellent tasking. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It.
you grow with the better your task is, the
Hmm.
more extraordinary the information you can receive is.
And it's such a difficult, delicate process, starting from how they design the project itself, how they design the experience, the way the question is worded, is it too abstract? Is it specific enough? Um, is it grounded in reality or is it some kind of abstract thought that and if it's one of those woo or mystery targets, you really have to set your intention appropriately so your viewers aren't just going because with future forecasting we've done a lot of experiments where it's just a broad tasking and the sessions are fabulous but the viewers like it's hard because there's such a flood of information coming
Yeah,
because it's such a broad
absolutely.
tell me what's
Yeah,
going to happen in 2025. Well, there are so many things we could pull into, right?
yeah, yeah,
Unless there's a big luminous event they're probably not all going to
yeah,
pull on the same thing.
yeah.
And then to guide you, there's different ways, as you know, when you're getting those movements. Also a delicate thing because
Mm,
they could easily front load you if they don't word things the right way or draw your attention in a certain way. It's very hard
yeah,
to still keep you blind without revealing the target.
yeah.
And
The,
Daz is
oh,
wonderful at it.
he's just honestly,
Hmm.
amazing. And the privilege of living these experiences that
Hmm.
we're going through,
Right.
and it comes from the tasking. And I mean, I know that I have been viewing for 20 years. I mean, Lynn trained me. I
Right.
finished in 2001,
Right.
but and it was only through working in groups.
Hmm.
Daz had jump gate, and then I worked with Gail, and Gail's really spot on tasking, and that brings the best out of you. Just that makes such a difference. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
because I think there's value in seeing others, seeing how they're interpreting and experiencing a target, seeing other people's styles and
absolutely.
approaches, and then just that division of effort as well. I think it's amplified. I mean, they even with the experiments they're looking at with tech and hive minds, and obviously what they're saying is that multiple minds linked together can work and process faster than just one mind, right? So it's the same thing through consciousness. We're all solving a problem or answering a question much more efficiently than one viewer could do on their own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then getting together afterwards to work through it gives you,
Yes.
and it has a feedback loop as well
Hmm. Right.
on the time of your session, so that
Yeah.
this breaking it down and working through it is, makes a difference as well.
There's that timepiece, right? Like the conversation we're having right now is potentially enhancing the sessions we already did a month ago. And
Hmm.
that really, in the beginning, that's hard to wrap your head around, but we are right now giving ourselves feedback and connecting to the data that we brought in.
Yeah. And that's when you're learning remote viewing, I tell all
Hmm.
my students to do that. It's called a P2 exercise. Go
Yeah.
back into phase two, look at your feedback, write it all down, do the whole
Yeah.
nother session. So when you're starting out, that's the best way you can get better quickly.
Yeah. And that's not easy to do, especially for me, because especially when I was learning, it was like I did the target, I looked at the feedback, cool, I got it, I didn't get it, and then I wanted to move on to the next one. And I wasn't engaging with my feedback. And it's so important to really sit there and go, okay, and I could still be better at it, but here's the elements of my session. Here's where this information came from. Here's how this correlates. Here's where I missed. I think the more we engage with that feedback, the stronger we become as a viewer, because again, that's part of the remote viewing experience is really working with that feedback.
Yeah. I've got a theory that we don't miss, we just get
Mm.
noise in the way.
Yes.
The,
Yeah.
your subconscious is so interested in what we're doing, so collaborative, so interested. It goes immediately out there. It's just there's an interference in the last bit coming back.
I I agree. I'm working on reframing how I word things because I do agree with you and believe that after my interview with Birdie, with transdimensional mapping, and she's really reshaped and reframed. She's like, no information, all this information is valuable no matter what it is. And she says, I don't look at it as I'm trying to hit a target. We're having an experience. And she really does a good job of reframing, the
Mm,
entire remote viewing experience and the value of everything that comes in. And that for me has alleviated a lot of the anxiety of I got to be right, I got to hit the target because I find so much value right or wrong in the experience I've had. I gain insight. And if that happens, to me, it was a successful project. Whether I described what the tasker was looking for or not, if I can take value from it, I did what I set out to do.
Yeah, yeah. And this project, it was so powerful. I mean,
Yeah,
that whole experience of just describing this person, this man,
yeah,
where he came from, who was he, and then how the hell that anomaly happened.
yeah. And what's interesting, what really got me is in looking at the feedback as they're analyzing the shroud, they did find traces of radiation that they can't account for. Where did it come from? How did it get there? But there's definitely measurable radiation. And when I saw that, I went, okay, I'll say the terms. I hit the target. That was a very big piece because it was all energy that we were looking at.
Mm,
But what was it? I mean, it's open to interpretation.
mm, mm. Yes,
Yeah,
and the way that the shard had created the image in 3D as
yeah,
well. This
right,
incredible, the face, the person, the
right.
body. I mean, they were able to bring up, you know, a
And
body.
we talked about that, in the session where think about the significance of that, of when the shroud was made, the technology to view that didn't come about until just a few decades ago. I mean,
Mm,
and now we're looking at it, the significance of that, and you have to wonder, is that was that intentional and is that sending a message specifically designated for this point in our time in our existence 2000 years later to then recognize this because we now have the technology to see what was actually created.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fascinating.
It's very hard to find the words to
I know.
to talk about it and
Well,
understand.
that's that piece of it's an experience that we doesn't come to us in words, and then we have to translate it. And in some cases, as remote viewers, the words don't exist yet. We don't have vocabulary to describe some of the things that we see, and we have to do
Yes,
the best that we can
yes,
to uh,
yes.
to explain it.
Yeah, and I mean, I always say, and when we present our work, I always say, I don't understand what I've got here, but I've
Yeah,
got this
yeah,
because I'm not an engineer. I'm not a.
right, right, yeah. It's such a learning curve with pretty much every experience that you go through. But again, and that's why I would love to see if every discipline trained remote viewers, doctors, engineers, and
Mm,
imagine a multidisciplinary team of remote viewers for different targets where the tasker would understand the value of each skill set coming into
yeah,
that. I
yeah.
mean, if we really could use remote viewing in a variety of different fields, I think we could gain a lot of insights and understandings. I think that would rival some of what AI is doing for us right now. I think we have that potential.
Or we could find a way to collaborate with AI.
That's a whole
And
other, yes, yes, I think we could. I think the benefits of that tool and potential consciousness at some point, I think, are tremendous.
yes, yes, because maybe it's AI who can I know what that is.
Right. Yeah. I know
It,
I've experimented with Darby's experimented with putting just the raw data into Chat GPT and having it do analysis.
yeah, that's very interesting. I when we did the bets ball, I tried
Mm,
putting in, and it was very disparaging. It took sort of the Wikipedia outlook.
mm,
I said,
yeah. Well, I think there's a more advanced, like it has several
it's
different
advanced since then.
generations of it have come out since we
Yes,
did that
yes,
project.
yes,
Um, and its analytical capabilities now have
yes.
have blown me away. It really have.
Yes, yes. And it seems to be more profound
Hmm.
now as well.
Hmm.
And in the
Yeah.
beginning, it was like it seems as though it was just Wikipedia talking.
Yeah.
Wikipedia won't accept any. It's human controlled, and
Yeah.
everything you try and change, they change it back to the status quo.
Yeah.
So
But now with this tool, I was sharing
yeah,
with you earlier, it takes all of the conversations I had, and then you can ask it a question like, tell me something I don't know about myself, or tell me, and it puts together, or tell me something like a guarded secret I have, something. and it knows who I am as well, if not better than I know who I am on topics that I've never shared with ChatGPT, but because of my speech patterns and my choice in vocabulary
Um,
and my perspectives, it's able to put this together. I mean, that's huge analytics happening right there at a
yeah.
level that I don't know that mankind can do on their own to get those insights. It's very profound to have those experiences with ChatGPT.
Yes, this is such a big change. When I was a kid, we didn't have the internet.
Hmm. Same. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean,
we've
think
got
about that.
it's just extraordinary. I remember when we got fax machines.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. And then the dial-up internet came and it would tie up your phone lines and it was like this big deal. And now
Yeah.
we carry it around in our pockets,
And we
with
talk
our
to this consciousness, this form of consciousness on our cell phones.
yeah. Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. And well, not to mention the connection that you and I are having right now because of technology.
Yeah.
We're able to sit here and have a
Yeah.
video chat where when we were kids, we'd be writing each other letters, and this conversation would have taken months to transpire between us.
Yeah. And it would
Yeah.
have been in the form of symbols as well, because you can't
Yeah.
write down these kind of words.
Right. You're absolutely right. Fascinating. Coral, we've gone
Yeah.
pretty deep and touched on a lot of things. Anything else that you want to touch on before we wrap up our discussion here?
No, it's taking a lot of metabolizing to
Mm-hmm.
to to get through this. And it was a very beautiful experience. It's really nice to actually talk to somebody else about what they went through at the
Yeah.
same time, and the things we touched on mutually as
Mm-hmm.
well. So it's
Yeah.
like you know, it's not something that I think we'll ever confirm. There's no
Yeah.
feedback. The
Right.
feedback is the drawings we did of the man, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if we said radiation, because there's radiation, but all the other kind of things, we can only have a shared experience on it in
Well,
liminal
or
space.
well, that's it, right? And I think some of the feedback are those other synchronistic events that have happened, which for us as the viewer is enough to confirm,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're not putting this out for scientific scrutiny at this point. We're looking to find meaning in the experience on a spiritual level for ourselves. And I
Mhm.
think those moments are enough feedback right now for us to say, okay, I accept what I experienced as the way I'm interpreting it. And I think that's significant.
Yeah, and that's part of our evolution
Hmm.
into, a more 4D world.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
allows us to see it. We see it and experience it all the time now.
You're
We
right.
can cross through when we need to. So,
Yeah, which is a wonderful gift. Coral, I always enjoy our conversations. I look forward to seeing you at the next debrief for this, wherever Daz has us
hey,
right now. I won't talk about it, but oh my goodness.
yes,
And for
that's
future conversations, down the rabbit
okay.
hole we go. So thank
Yeah.
you, as always, for
Thank you
being a
for
guest with me.
talking to me as well.
Always my pleasure. So, on behalf of Coral and the rest of the Future Forecasting Group, I'm Dennis Snappy II. Thanks for watching.